Today is Juneteenth. It's a day celebrated as the end of slavery in America, when federal troops entered Galveston, Texas, and General Gordon Granger announced to the population, all slaves are free. Now Congress is forming a committee to look at the idea of reparations. So let's look at that ourselves. Between 1619 and 1865, about 4 million people were brought to what became the United States in the transatlantic slave trade. They and their descendants fueled the nation's economy, especially in the South. Labor was free. When slavery was abolished after the Civil War, the newly freed people were originally promised 40 acres and a mule. But after President Lincoln's assassination, Andrew Johnson overturned the agreement, instead compensating the former slave holders. Reconstruction was ended prematurely in 1877, and through the 20th century, black people were denied voting rights through Jim Crow laws. Black veterans were denied full GI Bill benefits. Black homeowners were denied equal housing through redlining, and black Americans were terrorized by white supremacist groups. More than 4,400 people were lynched. In 2016, average median black American net worth was $17,409. Now, that means that half of all families had net worth, houses, whatever assets they've got that was higher than that. Half had net worth that was lower. Take a look at this. Median white American income, $171,000, 10 times the median of black families. This is according to the Federal Reserve. Between 1983 and 2017, black home ownership actually ticked down a little bit, 2 points. After years, as you can see, of very little variation, white home ownership has gone up fairly steadily. These are the things that this new reparations effort wants to address. H.R. 40, as the bill is known, calls to study the damage done by slavery and its legacy, and formulation of proposals for programs to increase economic, educational, and other opportunities for black Americans. This morning, Senator Cory Booker read off even more statistics on racial inequity today, and he and actor Danny Glover gave their assessments on the need for change.
It is a cancer on the soul of our country and hurts the whole body politic. This idea that it's just about writing a check from one American to another falls far short of the importance of this conversation and what I believe we will truly talk about.
Justice for black people will not flow into society merely from court decisions, nor from fountains of political oratory. White America must recognize that justice for black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure of our society.
Joining us now, Senior Vice President for Social Justice at the New School, our friend Maya Wiley. Maya, Cory Booker pointed out that many people think this is just cutting checks. That's not the case. Explain what the goal here really is.
Well, let's start with the fact that the commission itself, this is a proposal for a commission to study. You know, we have commissions all the time in this country. It's one of the tools that Congress uses to examine complex issues. About 70% of commissions are policy-based examinations. Allie, you ran through all the complex history and all of the policies related to how we created essentially black economic exclusion. And the question becomes, how do we change that? And this is a tool, and it's a democratic process tool for examining these kinds of complex questions in order to give advice to Congress. It doesn't dictate anything happening. It gives advice to Congress, enabling it to have the expertise of a lot of people who've been studying these issues, and many people have.
So that, you know, the idea that we should have that commission is not controversial. I ticked off some of the history, but there's a lot more in there. And the way in which you would provide reparations for those things, if we had agreement on what you want to provide reparations for, is complex. The net results is in 2016, there was a Marist poll that found that 68% of Americans, including 85% of whites and 32% of blacks, oppose reparations. That may be true. I wonder whether the question is understood. In other words, what do you even mean by reparations?
I think that's exactly right. The question isn't understood. And in some ways, you know, reparations it's a hot button word that takes people to places that aren't necessarily what we're talking about. That to Cory Booker's point about check
Not
writing.
just checks, right?
Right, and I think part of the reason we think about it that way is because of Japanese internment, where we had a commission And then there were checks cut to folks who had been really mistreated in gross.
But it was a mathematically easier calculation at the time because it was a certain set period of time.
With specific people
things
who were documented and you could identify. So here, the point is there's a debate in the community around what does it mean to correct the deep injustices of the past that people today experience. And I think part of the importance of this idea of a public commission is to help people, all Americans, understand that this is actually about fixing structures. Take the subprime crisis, right? 240,000 black people lost homes.
And they're not in good shape today.
And they're not in good shape today. That wealth gap you pointed to, Allie. But when we fix some of these structural problems about how people get discriminated against, say in home loans, or as we heard from Mr. Hickenlooper, from access to credit if you're trying to start a small business, we're often not just fixing it for people who are black.
You're fixing it for everybody.
You're actually fixing it for everybody. And one of the misunderstandings about this conversation is somehow it's us versus them. This is actually about how do you pass good policy that builds more social cohesion and social mobility.
And removes inequity in general.
And removes inequity in general. And if you don't, I mean, it's interesting in my Twitter feed when I said I was coming on the show and when I was talking about Juneteenth, you know, folks were like, this is terrible. It's going to hand the election to Donald Trump. And my response is, well, is our answer to Donald Trump to actually move away from a democratic process? Because the discussion starting today is about 13% of the American population and about fixing something we all need to fix, which is inequality, because it's impacting people whether you're white, whether you're Latino, whether you're Asian or Native American. And if we're pointing to the weaknesses of our public policy in investing in our people, we're actually starting to fix all that's wrong with American society and meet our aspiration of a more unified country.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.